G'day guys and gal. People think the creation of a space marine is a huge effort, and they wouldn't be wrong, but compared to the creation of a custodian, it's as easy as drowning a 4-year-old. It takes almost an entire world's worth of effort and output to create each custodian. The biomancy and arcane science just as complex as the supreme mastercrafted Aurora Might armor and weaponry. They are perfect in nearly every way, and if their creation was easier, there would be no need for the Adeptus Custodes or even the Primarchs. Now, it used to be basically impossible to make this video since all the codex would say is, wow, making Custodes is really hard and mysterious and shit. But with some new lore dropping about it, we can finally lay out everything we know about the creation, recruitment, training, and even promotion of the Adeptus Custodes. Before we get started, boy do I have something for you today. Ra, the Golden Sun, is the best-selling major mini by far. However, it's also one of our oldest and it has a number of issues. The swords are too thin, the islands are too thin, it's difficult to separate the details and elements. So after months of work, we've officially created and are releasing Ra V2, a massive upgrade in all respects, featuring thicker swords, significantly better detail and detail separation for ease of painting, a new more regal cape, a better waist tassel thingo, and best of all, 2 helmet variants, one of which is like an upgraded version of Ra V1's helmet, whereas the second helmet is significantly more aligned with Imperious's helmet from Diablo, which was the original inspiration for Ra to begin with. The model is also bulked up to better fit in with the Custodian army. Basically, I made it better in every way, and I can comfortably say it's the fucking sickest major mini I've ever released. Alongside this, we have also put together the Golden Guardian Value Bundle, featuring all 6 Golden Guardian models for 25% off. These include Oriel, the Golden Hope, Kitten, the Shadow Warden, the Golden Dreadlord, which is a very underrated model in my opinion, the Golden Dreamer, and of course Ra V2. Ra V1 will be kept live for the next 48 hours or so before being taken down for good. So for those of you that want to pick it up in case you like it more, or you want a model that is vanishing from the world and becoming a limited collectible, now is your last chance. But wait, there's more. I had a full-on Insano style non-metallic metal Ra V2 commission painted that I'm giving away. For your chance to win, all you need to do is buy any of the Golden Guardian models. Each model you buy is 1 entry. Buying the 6-pack value bundle is 6 entries. Winner will be drawn in a week. This was done by Sodrag, an elite level pro painter, and is insane. I'm actually low-key sad that I'll have to part with it. Link is below. Today we'll go over the recruitment, training, and promotion of the Adeptus Custodes, even going into how they're separated into their different shield hosts. Let's get into it. We will be drawing a lot of parallels and similarities to the Space Marine recruitment process just as a point of reference. While Space Marines are recruited around 12 to 14 years old, the Custodian Guard's recruitment starts a lot younger, around the 2 to 4 year old mark. This is because Custodes aren't actually cut open and filled with gene seed and various organs. They instead have their DNA edited and improved upon on the molecular level. As such, they grow into their power and abilities rather than having their power shoved into them one organ at a time. This is why Space Marines look rough, covered in scars and with giganticism, whilst Custodes are actually proportioned very aesthetically, still maintaining their human proportions, however just a lot taller, larger, and very muscly. Space Marines will recruit from any populace on any world, seeking genetic compatibility and temperament. Custodes, on the other hand, recruit from only the sons, and technically now daughters, of Terra's noble families. Now, as a note about the female Custodes situation, before you guys have a fucking aneurysm and come after me with flaming torches, the in-law justification for why female Custodes can exist and be just as powerful as male Custodes is because they begin the process of transformation before their bodies have experienced any hormonal changes due to gender. 2 to 4 year old girls generally have pretty similar, if not identical, muscle, bone density, and whatnot to their male counterparts at the same age, compared to Astartes who at the age of 12 to 14 would have undergone significant deviation from females, thus are much better candidates, so the process was designed for them and them alone. Now this still creates the issue of female custodians basically just being dudes, since the role of hyper-masculine demigod super soldiers that don't take shit, kill lots of people, and whatnot is a very guy thing to do, thus why even have female Custodes to begin with, but at least from an in-law sci-fi science perspective, it makes sense. You don't have to like female custodians, I'm not the biggest fan, but you can't really argue with that. After testing their genetic compatibility, the offered children are taken in by a highly mysterious, specialized order of brilliant scientists. These scientists are born, live, and die for the sole purpose of custodian creation. They have entire families and generations that live deep within the Imperial Palace, hidden away in a secret golden laboratory, and they work their ass off. This custodian lab is so secret that even during the Siege of Terra, when the palace itself was breached, not a single traitor was able to find or even get wind of where the lab was. The process of Custodian creation is kept so secret and protected, as the Imperium has to ensure that no potential weakness or countermeasure to the Custodians can be created. Or worst case scenario, the enemy gets their hands on the blueprints, equipment, and even scientists that create Custodians, give it to Fabius Bile, and then he manages to create some kind of Chaos Custodian. That would be bad. This is one of the main reasons why there has never been an attempt to mass produce Custodians. Theoretically, you could create a Custodian recruitment lab on dozens of worlds across the Imperium, training up hundreds of families over the course of centuries or millennia. You could harvest more worlds for the resources to create the Custodian war gear and have the process almost just as good as it is on Terra. If the Emperor's blessing and presence is needed to finish the process, then they could ship these non-Terran Custodian recruits to Terra to finish their training. Theoretically, the 10,000 could become the 100,000, but inevitably the secrets of the Custodians would be leaked to all enemies, either by a lab leak or a world with Custodian recruitment being taken. The concept of that happening is so unacceptable to the Custodian Guard that the idea of mass Custodian recruitment has never been brought up. What makes them who they are is how unique, special, and singular each Custodian is. Mass production would lower their standards and risk a powerful enemy countermeasure. Speaking of which, there is a lot of reference in the lore about how each Custodian is a singular piece of hand-forged art, never to be replicated, unlike the Space Marines who are designed to be mass-produced in a similar way. But what does this actually mean? Well, the lore is sketchy and doesn't tell us straight on. However, I believe it means each Custodian is completely custom based on their genetics. They aren't all given the same juice, but instead have their individual genes specially modified. It's like if you wanted a fleet of supercars and had infinite resources, the best engineers, and so on. However, the catch was that each supercar had to be individually designed and built, so it was a one of one, yet needed to match a specific set of standards, such as top speed, acceleration, handling, fuel economy, and so on. That is like the Custodians, making mass production even harder. An interesting note about the Custodian anatomy and physiology is that since they achieve their glorious advanced bodies through molecular gene editing, they don't actually get new organs. Custodians only have one heart, 2 lungs, a normal rib cage, and so on. This may seem like a disadvantage compared to the Space Marines, who can indeed lose a heart or lung or two and stay alive. But a Custodian is so advanced that if you pierce his heart, it's more likely the heart will clot and the Custodian will live, rather than killing the Golden Warrior. A Space Marine needs 2 hearts to try keep up with a Custodian's single heart. In saying that, yeah, you could argue that a Space Marine's ability to spit acid, eat flesh to gain knowledge, enter into a life-saving coma, and other niche abilities do give them an edge over the Custodians who cannot do any of that. However, those abilities don't seem to help a Space Marine much when a Custodian disembowels them and then decapitates them within the span of a single heartbeat. Long story short, a Custodian is more durable than a Space Marine despite less organs and redundancies. There have been multiple instances in the lore of a Custodian taking obscene damage only to just sort of walk it off, damage that a Space Marine would instantly be killed if they suffered. The Custodians spend a shitload of their time during their recruitment training, both their mind, body, and spirit, as they have their entire brains and personalities rewired to be absolutely loyal to the Emperor and absolutely incorruptible. If at any point a Custodian in training falters, they are sent to the Mechanicus as trash to be harvested, and any remains to be turned into a servitor. So it's not just the Custodian creation that makes them so steadfast and incorruptible, but also the individual Custodian themselves. Another factor that may indicate why they cannot be created on other planets or facilities is that the Custodians even have their souls changed and edited. Perhaps the Emperor left a shard of himself within the lab to be used for this process. However, it explains why Custodians are extremely incorruptible, extremely hard to possess, are resistant to psychic attacks, despite not being psychers or blanks themselves, are bound to the Emperor, and so on. After a certain amount of time, trials, and tribulations, a potential Custodian must go through an extremely difficult trial to earn their Auroromite, that being facing up against chaos and coming through unscathed. They must out-wrestle a demon of Khorne, stare into the eyes of a Tzeentchian demon without blinking or going mad, resist the temptation of a Slaaneshi demon, and funnily of all, endure the farts of a Nurglite demon. Each trial lasts for hours. The demons are all imprisoned within the Dark Cells, the most secure prison in the galaxy where the most horrific eldritch horrors are imprisoned. So it's not like they let them run free in the palace or summon them or whatever. This is the final tempering a Custodian needs to be fully immune to chaos before they can join the ranks of the 10,000. From here, they join in on the Blood Games, a live training for the Custodes where they either release enemies of the Imperium into the palace to be hunted down, such as Chaos Marines, Tyranid Orcs, and so on, or the Custodians themselves are tasked with the goal of assassinating the Emperor. The purpose of that is twofold. Firstly, it's extremely good training for a Custodian, and secondly, it exposes any weaknesses the palace may have, After all, a genius super soldier who knows the ins and outs of the palace, its guardians and defense mechanisms has the best chance of infiltration, so if they can't manage it, then no one can. So by the time a custodian first enters active combat, they have faced down chaos, killed various enemies in the palace, may have attempted to assassinate the emperor, and have been training with and against the greatest human warriors in the galaxy. Pretty elite. As for their war gear, custodians are granted custom-made one-of-one Auroramite warplate, which is more or less just a better version of Ceramite in every way, the armor material that Space Marines use. The creation of Auroramite and custodian weaponry is almost as mysterious and difficult as the creation of the custodians themselves. When a custodian is made and passes all their trials, what then? How do they decide which shield host they join? Well, each custodian has a different temperament, personality, and talents. Custodian Amon Takamarian was famous for his intelligence and detective skills, doing extremely well in the blood games. Other custodians like Tribune Colquhoun are more aggressive and violent. As such, Colquhoun was put into the Dread Host, a shield host known for the ruthless extermination of the enemy. If a custodian receives dreams from the Emperor telling them what to do, they will join the Emissaries Imperalis and become the official voice of the Emperor. If a custodian has been in service for 5 centuries, they are eligible to become a custodian warden. As a warden, they will then be eligible to join the Shadowkeepers, the wardens of the dark cells. Custodians that are extremely diligent for threats and make great protectors and bodyguards can end up as a part of the Aquilian Shield and so on. They are assigned to a shield host based on their skills and merit. Now before I wrap up, I have 2 more questions I want to answer that a lot of people are confused about. If the original custodians were handmade by the Emperor, are custodians still made to the same standard today? And secondly, are the custodians actually made to be immortal? Like, are there custodians still alive today that were present during the Heresy or even Great Crusade? For the first question, yes, the Emperor had a huge hand in their creation, however the thousands of scientists can create custodians without the Emperor, custodians that are just as good as they were 10,000 years prior. As for custodian immortality, it's confusing, but overall no, a custodian does not age out of his prime. That doesn't mean he can't look aged though. After all, Trajan Valoris looks pretty advanced in his years, and then there is that special shield captain model that is genuinely an old man. However, this age is done more for aesthetic model reasons. These custodians aren't slower or weaker than a normal custodian. If anything, it's the opposite. Some custodians do retire to become Eyes of the Emperor, spies that go out into the galaxy, but not from age, more so from an accumulation of injuries that eventually sees them forfeit their war gear and leave the palace. As such, there are a number of Horus Heresy era custodians who are still active, Amon Takamarian amongst them. However, after the war in the Webway and Siege of Terra, I'd say close to 95 to 98% of the original 10,000 custodians were killed, with their numbers slowly being rebuilt over the course of 10,000 years. So there are very few custodians still alive that witnessed the Emperor at his prime. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up Ra V2 or any of the Golden Guardians, including Ra V1 who is going out of production, for your chance to win this epically painted Ra V2 model. Hit the subscribe button, hit the real subscribe button for more golden content. Join the school for more memes and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.